Hello, 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 and welcome to the College of Creation. My name is Dan.
And my name is Michael.
And we are Dungeons & Dragons DMs who love to homebrew items, spells, creatures, and features for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And this is a show where every single week we come up with brand new homebrew for you, the listeners, based on prompts that we get from y'all.
I like this prompt a lot. I know that you weren't as gung-ho about it as I am, but I am excited to talk about it nonetheless. Yeah, I'm very happy with what I came up with this time.
Nice. Our prompt for this week was essentially around cursed items. Items that are cursed and ideally can be overcome as the player levels up.
Yep.
I struggle in general with cursed items at my table in general, and I'll go into more detail, I think, when we start talking about the actual things we created, but I think cursed items are really tricky because you run the risk sometimes of making it feel like you've tricked your players in some way, and that doesn't super feel awesome all the time as a player, to feel like you've been tricked into thinking you had something really cool and then actually it's cursed. Or I think the other flip side of that is that if there's enough sort of like meta knowledge and enough kind of, if you've set up an environment where your players are likely to expect things to be cursed potentially, they're going to be extra cautious, and it's going to be kind of hard to get them to bite sometimes, even on the stuff that's not cursed.
Yeah, it does prompt kind of an air of hesitation that's always looming a little bit. And that can definitely really halt a lot of natural gameplay. I agree with you 100%. It is a very delicate thing to include in the game, not made any better by the fact that there are very, very few accessible mechanical rules actually in the rule book for the implementation of curses. Every curse is a little bit different, and that can also lead to a bit of contention between DMs and players if that's not handled correctly.
It's also not always made clear in the descriptions of certain, specific items. Like you say, all of these like cursed items tend to have unique curses unto themselves and their own rules about how you deal with it in game. But the only thing that's really made clear by something like the remove curse spell, for example, it doesn't actually remove the curse on the item. It allows you to unattune to it.
Yep.
But yeah, like you said, there's just this like hesitation tone that comes over so many players. Like the first time they encounter something like that, you got me with that one, but now I'm like never going
now
to...
Now I'm wiser.
Attune to something that we haven't fully cast, identify and whatever else on to make sure it's not cursed, because I don't want to get...
We need an expert's appraisal on this before we move forward.
Or, if I put something in front of a party that's just like, here's an encounter, it's not with a creature, it's not with anything else, it's just here's an item, and somebody brings up, should be careful, maybe it's cursed. Like, there's a strong tendency that the party will just be like, it's not worth it.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Let's not risk it. And then they just leave.
You're probably right.
Like, oh, well, that entire thing was just disappointing for all of us then.
Right.
Kind of wasted our time. And I love my encounters to sort of continue to propel things forward. So, yeah, curses are a tricky space for me in particular. But, we'll get into some more of it down the line.
I think that curses are, for me at least, very similar to disease, where there are things that are immune to diseases or curses, but it's not... Diseases also are kind of not super spelled out very well. They're also kind of case specific. Even with diseases, there are mechanics built in, like paladins can easily avoid disease. Nothing like that is in place for curses that's built into a class structure. If you do curse your players, it's a lot harder to get out of that. It's a lot harder to walk that back once you open the door.
You can see the desire for it within the game playing community, that more perhaps more robust rule set, or at least they want to implement things like diseases and curses in a meaningful way, right? That like affects the world at large, but
Yeah.
it's so case by case basis, and it's just a tricky thing to implement. I mean, I think especially diseases are so tough. I very rarely find diseases to be interesting or useful in my games because Lesser Restoration is a pretty cheap spell. Lesser Restoration gets rid of disease? Or is that Greater Restoration? But certainly Paladins can dump 5 Lay on Hands points and cure a disease, and that's what you have at first level. At first level Paladin, you can cure any disease. That's weird. And yet, for curses, there's no like really hard and fast rule for getting rid of curses. I guess it makes sense that it would be more difficult to break than a typical disease. But even so, you would expect something more than a remove curse spell for certain things, but then not everything is affected by a remove curse spell. It's very strange.
Right. The most robust rule set for curses is in Van Richten's. And it explicitly says there are 3 components to each curse. There's a pronouncement, which is the giving of the curse from one entity to another. The burden of the curse, which kind of lays out the effects of what a creature would go through while cursed. And the resolution. So that is how the curse is removed. And in the resolution section, it even says death usually ends a curse. Death usually ends a curse, but the curse returns in full force if the cursed character returns to life without resolving the curse beforehand. So it's a pretty debilitating thing to put onto a player. If you do come back, you're still going to be cursed.
There are just so many interesting things in that. And I kind of wish that I had looked more into that particular section too, because that feels like a framework that that could be more consistently applied across the game, right? Like, I really appreciate, like, there can be cursed items that maybe the curse lives within the item, and there are notable effects either based on an aura around this item or the holder of the item, whatever it might be, right? But that resolution is not always in there, and the sort of like ultimate goal of the curse is not always in there either. I mean, you think of, I had a player who I gave them a Sword of Vengeance, which is a cursed item, in the D&D terminology sense, right?
Sure.
You pick it up, you attune to it, you think it's just a magic longsword or whatever, but it turns out it's cursed. But it's not clear, like, where does this curse come from? Like, there's some idea of, like, I want some lore in there, and also, like, how does one overcome this except for getting rid of your attunement and throwing it away? Like, it just doesn't seem like it's a useful item except to make a PC's life more difficult. And I would really like to see a framework that allows a PC not to just have a curse item as a way to make their character's life more difficult, but that there is some sort of path forward. There is some sort of path that says, like, this should be a means to an end, right? It shouldn't just be like a piece of chaos to throw into your world. Like, there needs to be, at least from, I think, the DM and the table's perspective, some sort of goal that you're moving towards when you're talking about having or introducing a cursed item or a curse in general, right? It can't just be something that adds chaos. It should be something that is leading in a direction to further the story. And so many cursed items, I feel like, that exist within the game, they don't have that structure and they don't do that.
Yes, I agree. There definitely needs to be a point to something that's so powerful. It can't just be used flippantly. The thing that I always kind of try to do with curses is make it a story beat, like base an arc, or at least a portion of an arc around it, because something that major has to have major stakes. I really try and avoid affecting only one player with a curse. If a curse can be an all-encompassing party-wide problem, that's much more manageable than you have a party adventuring through wherever, and one of you is cursed, and that really sucks for that one person. Right. But everybody else is not kind of sharing that burden. I always try and make it at least a bit of a bigger picture thing to make it more manageable.
Yeah. Well, shall we get into it? I'd love to see what curses you came up with and how you kind of tackled this tricky problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you go ahead and open your document? I made one curse.
Okay.
I listed one curse and 4 items.
Okay.
So the idea here is that these items on the second page, if you come across them, most likely they are cursed with this curse. Okay. Not every single time, but there's a good chance. But I call this the Saint's Curse.
Okay.
As I've said before, I am a huge fan of Christmas. This week, it's Thanksgiving later this week. Next week is December. I have been decorating my house since Halloween. Big Christmas fan.
I have seen it in your video background.
Yeah. So I call this the Saint's Curse.
Is this the Santa Claus, Michael?
It sure is. It is loosely based on the Tim Allen classic, The Santa Claus.
This is incredible. I'm very excited.
The Saint's Curse is rare to come across, but can be difficult to avoid if you don't successfully identify a stricken creature when you see one. It can be contracted in the following ways. If you reduce a creature stricken with the Saint's Curse to 0 hit points, you immediately contract the curse. If you attune to an item that has ever been attuned to by a creature stricken with the curse, you must roll 1d100 plus your character level. With a roll of 75 or lower, you contract the curse. So here we get into the... this curse it's not necessarily the effects are lessened here. You have a much lower chance of getting this curse the higher level you are. So as you level up, it's harder to contract the curse. If a creature stricken with the curse gifts you an item or a piece of equipment and you accept, you must roll 1d100 plus your character level. With a roll of 50 or lower, you contract the curse. And if you hear a creature stricken with the curse singing, you must roll the same thing. With a roll of 25 or lower, you contract the curse. So if you attune to an item, higher chances. If you accept a gift, medium chances. If you hear them singing, relatively low chances, especially if you're higher level. But there's still some chance.
Sure.
So that is the pronouncement of the curse. So now for the burden. If you contract the Saint's Curse, it may not seem terribly intrusive at first. However, you may begin to notice its effects more prominently the longer the curse persists. Once cursed, you exist under the following conditions. You are proficient with Tinker's Tools, and you must craft at least one item worth 10 gold pieces or more per week. You subtract your character level from the hours required to craft any item to a minimum of 1 hour.
Okay.
If another creature takes action to assist you in any way, no matter how small, you must gift them an item or piece of equipment from your inventory of your choice.
Great.
Your proficiency is doubled for the persuasion skill, and you can add your character level to your modifier for checks made to convince another creature to take a gift from you. So the higher your level, the more persuasive you are to give gifts to other people, even if they refuse.
Nice.
And if you are asked to sing for any reason, you must oblige the character that made the request. If you refuse to comply with any of the above actions, you immediately take psychic damage equal to 20 minus your character level. It is reduced as you go up in level. And the resolution. Breaking the Saint's Curse without the aid of spellcasting is both a straightforward and painstaking process. Once per week, at the exact time and the exact location when and where you were first cursed, you can attempt to roll a 1d100. If you roll below your character level, the curse is broken.
Okay.
Nice and simple. Painstaking, but simple.
Just don't move around too much.
Just don't move around. You got to stay in the same spot.
Yeah.
The more you travel, the longer you're going to have this curse for sure.
Yeah.
So you will notice that the curse is not necessarily tied to an item. So you can get it without ever being in contact with a cursed item. Mm-hmm. But I did include 4 items down here below, obviously up to DM discretion, very likely to be cursed with this.
Great.
The first of which is the Belt of Malleability. Well attuned to this belt, you can move through a space as narrow as 1 inch without injury or expending extra movement to do so. You can slide down a chimney.
Great, slide down a chimney. Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm going to use all of these items to make an NPC Santa Claus. Just,
Perfect.
That's just going to happen.
Next is the Coat of Beast Flight. Well attuned to this coat, you have proficiency in the animal handling skill and can cast Speak with Animals at will. Also well attuned to this coat, any beast you are mounted on top of or is pulling a vessel in which you are riding in gains a fly speed of 50 feet. So if you're riding something, it can fly.
You got your magical reindeer.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Next, we have the Gloves of Swift Exit. These magical gloves hold 12 charges and regain 1d10 plus 2 charges each day at dawn. Well attuned to the gloves, you can lift a finger to your nose and speak a command word to cast one of the following spells, spending charges accordingly. Misty Step for 2 charges, Dimension Door for 4 charges, and Far Step for 5 charges.
Great.
Just along spell casting lines. Yep.
Perfect.
And the last of the 4 items here, I have the Sleigh of Portal Travel. This vehicle has a fly speed of 200 feet and a base movement speed of 60 feet if it's just traveling across the ground.
Perfect.
While piloting this vehicle, you can cast the Arcane Gate spell at will. Now, this is the high-level spell. It's a 5th-level spell. You can cast it at will, with the following exceptions. You use the sleigh as your casting focus for this, so you have to be in the sleigh. And you have to use that as your casting focus. The only things that can travel through the portals you create are you, the sleigh, and anything attached to or carried within it. So you can cast it as much as you want, but none of your friends can go through this portal. Nothing else can go through this portal unless they are in or on the sleigh.
Great.
And that's it. That's the Saint's Curse, along with some items that are probably cursed.
I like it a lot. It seems like actually kind of a fine curse. I'm actually okay with it, especially if it comes attached to one of these items. These items are solid. I imagine a fetch quest of like a mini campaign where you got to collect all of Santa's items. And, get them back to him because he cannot do his job without these.
Right. I am wondering, if this were to end up in a game and someone was cursed with this, it doesn't seem that bad on the surface. I agree with you. It feels fine until you, while you're adventuring, are required to make an item a week, which requires gold and supplies. So you always have to make sure that you have supplies on you.
Well, yeah, and anyone assisting you.
Constantly giving away your stuff.
Yeah.
Like even within your party, if somebody like saves you on the battlefield, you have to stop and give them an item. So at a point, I would imagine if you're going through a long period of attrition, your inventory is going to run low. And if you run out of stuff, you're taking psychic damage for every time you can't gift somebody that has been nice to you. So that could be pretty bad.
Michael, this is why you get a bag of ball bearings. And then you have 200 ball bearings, and you can just give a ball bearing as a gift. Is that allowed? Will you allow that?
That's very true. I would allow that, yeah.
No, I'm just collecting lake stones. I'm just collecting every shiny rock that we come across on our travels.
That's
just like,
yeah.
I need to have shiny rocks just in case anybody helps me.
Yes, this nice fine polished stone. It means so much to me. Here, let me gift this to you. I suppose I would allow that too.
Now, the question, of course, then becomes, because this does sort of turn into an infinite loop, right?
Yeah.
If you accept a gift from a creature with this curse, you also have a chance of being, struck with the curse.
100%.
So then you have to also start giving gifts.
Absolutely pandemic potential.
I mean,
100%.
This is going to snowball pun intended,
very quickly. Yeah.
Which actually does fall in line with the spirit of Christmas, which is the spirit of giving. Everybody's just giving gifts now. Everyone is compelled to give gifts.
We're all Santa's helpers. Yeah. At the end of the day.
I love it. It's perfect.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I like this a lot. It's not too detrimental. On the whole, it can be goofy and fun. And it's relatively easy to get rid of.
Yeah.
It'd be very easy to rig up a portal system.
True.
To go back to the place, so you could have your once a week trip.
Well, and again, like I think it would be a very fun, obviously, to have a little either a mini campaign or just a little arc.
Yeah.
Where you explore this curse a little bit, because it is kind of it is time limited, but not particularly complicated to get rid of. If you're a decent level, there's a decent chance that you're going to roll under. But even if you as a DM wanted to just like forego the roll and just be like, okay, you have to have this for a week, and like that's the sort of conditions of whatever quest we're giving you. So you have basically a week to get this thing done, and the whole time you are subject to this curse. It makes you very jolly and giving. And then you go back to the place where you got the curse, and if I was a DM and I was like, okay, we're ready to just like be done with this, you just like fudge it a little bit.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of fun.
Thanks, man.
That's a lot of fun. Well done. Well done.
What do you have for us this week?
Well, like I said, I have some complicated feelings about cursed items generally.
Sure.
Mostly around the idea of how it's not always clear what the point is of a curse and how one can go about dealing with it beyond just trying to get rid of the cursed item, which just throws it back out into the world. And again, it just doesn't feel like it was meaningful, right? So I was really stuck on the idea of trying to create something like a framework more than anything for the way that curses can work, and trying to tie it along with as a character levels up was a big part that stuck in my head as well, that part of the prompt. And so I was thinking about like, well, what are the other things that can be tied to a character's progression? So if you would open up your document here, I have 3 cursed items. They are all mostly working around a framework. And I don't necessarily know if I'm really in love with any of the items themselves.
Okay.
Some of the effects I think are pretty cool. What I really do think that I landed on that I do enjoy and think I can continue to tease out and play with some more is the framework here. So these are cursed items. The following document comprises a new framework for cursed items. So each one begins with a curse and a break threshold. When the threshold is met through an ability score improvement, a feat, or some other feature, the curse is broken and the reclaimed feature becomes active.
Oh, I love that.
So in the same way that like certain magic items have like a dormant feature and they can kind of grow and change, I think cursed items could take on a similar framework of they are cursed at first and then there's something that can be done to change it. Something to be done
to break the curse,
to break the curse and then still have the benefits of the item.
I like that a lot.
Or some shift in how it works. From something detrimental, something like harsh, to something perhaps in a similar light, but more positive. So we begin with the Soul Stealer. This is a magic weapon, rare and requires attunement. You have a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with this magic weapon. It's just a +1 magic sword or whatever. But its curse is that this weapon's curse slowly eats away at your soul, making those around you uneasy. You suffer disadvantage on all charisma checks and saving throws. So you kind of become hollow. There's a darkness that people can sort of sense coming off of you. The break threshold for this is +2 charisma. So when you are able to raise your charisma score by 2, you break the curse here, and then you activate the reclaimed feature. So when you break this weapon's curse, your soul is reinvigorated, and you can end one harmful magical effect on yourself at the beginning of your turn as a free action.
Love that.
Again, I'm not sure that I like the items as much as I like the idea of the framework.
The framework is very, very good.
Then we have the Weave Bleed Cloak, which has an effect that I really like, but again, Does it fit into the framework? I'm not sure. This is a wondrous item. It's a cloak. It's very rare. Requires attunement by a creature with the spellcasting feature. So you have a shifting bonus to AC and saving throws while wearing this magical cloak. This cloak feeds on the raw magic of the weave. You must expend a spell slot of first level or higher each day to empower this cloak. The bonus provided by this cloak is equal to the level of the spell slot you expend each day, maximum of +3. If you do not expend a spell slot, you begin the following day with 1 additional level of exhaustion that cannot be removed until you expend a spell slot to empower the cloak. So if you don't put magic into it, it starts sapping your life force and can exhaust you very quickly. Yeah. So you need to always kind of keep a spell slot reserved to go into the cloak. It does provide a benefit, but it's a little bit tricky and ideally doesn't do that to you. Its break threshold is a little bit higher. It requires a +1 intelligence, +1 wisdom, and +1 charisma. So you need to raise each of those stats by at least 1 to break it. And when you break this item's curse, your mastery of the weave increases, and this cloak's bonus becomes a permanent +2. Additionally, you can cast 1 spell of 3rd level or lower once per day without expending a spell slot.
I like that a lot.
So this just gives you basically a 3rd, 2nd, or 1st level spell slot free each day. And then we have the Martyr's Beacon, which is a helm that requires attunement as well. Your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to your character level when you attune to this helm, and whenever you gain a character level thereafter, your hit point maximum increases by 1 additional hit point. So it basically just does the tough feat, but only +1 instead of +2. But it also draws the ire of enemies to you. Its curse is that you cannot become invisible while attuned to the helm. And if a creature damages you on its turn, all of that creature's allies gain advantage on attack rolls against you until the end of that creature's next turn. You can get hit really hard.
A lot of times. You can get really hard a lot of times.
Depending on how many allies there are. Yeah. This break threshold is a +2 strength and +1 charisma. And when it is reclaimed, you break this helm's curse and become a fearless leader. You gain resistance to all bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And additionally, when a creature targets a creature that you can see within 15 feet of you with an attack or harmful spell, you can use your reaction to move up to your speed to the target creature and force yourself to be the target of the attack instead. I think this is the item that I like the least. It just feels like this is something else. This doesn't fit the curse framework that I was looking for, but I kind of got a little stuck around there. This just feels like a good tank item.
It feels like a Battlemaster maneuver.
It's not useful. But I do like the others a lot, and I like the framework of having a curse, having a clear and distinctive way to break it. In this case, I went with ability score improvement because that's sort of a thing that is at predictable levels, and it means that part of the calculation you do when you reach that level as a character is, do I want to break this curse?
Yeah.
And maybe do something that's not necessarily optimal for me, but like to break this curse is a big deal. So how do I, narratively make that make sense? Or maybe you just take a feat instead and just live with the curse a little bit longer.
Right.
And then, I like having the ability to have a cursed item that turns into something that's no longer cursed. It still provides a benefit and even does something more because you've done the work to overcome it.
I like that all 3 of these very clearly flip what the curse was from a narrative standpoint, and even the Martyr's Beacon. I know that you're not 100% sold on it, but going from being this beacon to a point that you can't become invisible, that you can never really escape the gaze of your enemies, to being a beacon of protection and hope to your allies, that is a journey in and of itself. So all 3 of these do a really good job completing the arc of the item. And I like that very much.
And maybe these are more just examples of the kind of way to use this framework more than they are really well thought out items in their own right. But I do think it's worth me playing around a little bit more with the concept of this framework. I'm calling it a win, even though I don't know if I'm sold on all the items themselves.
You don't need to be sold on the items. It's a sales pitch for the mechanic more than the items themselves, which is the point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've made it.
Weave bleed as a term.
Yeah.
I like when I come up with a fun term.
Yeah, that's real good. That's real good. I like them.
Quick and easy one here today. I feel like we did all right this time, all around. It feels like we're kind of like getting back into stride of like the things that are like, this feels comfortable. This feels like I can really get my wheels under me a little bit.
A little bit more procedural here. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see how long we can stay on that train, shall we?
Yeah, I think it is high time that we roll something.
Yes, indeed. Let's get around to it. Let's pull up our good old list of homebrew prompts. And while you're here, hey folks, thanks for listening. It's so great to have you here. If you have a homebrew prompt that you would like to hear us tackle on the show, watch me and Michael flail as we kick ourselves trying to come up with something halfway viable, give us a challenge. We would love to hear your ideas and put them in our ever-growing list. You can reach us with those homebrew prompts at collegeofcreationpod@gmail.com, or you can come on over to our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/collegeofcreationpod. There you can subscribe at the free tier, totally free, and hear all the regular episodes, see all of the creations. We upload all the PDFs so you can download them, you can check them out, and you can throw them into your games right away. And you can shoot us a message. Let us know if you've got any prompts that you'd like us to add. Michael.
Dan.
What are we rolling today?
Today we are going to be making prompt number 19.
19 from Ryan Galbraith on TikTok. Thanks, Ryan. The Soul Sorcerer. The sorcerer gains their magic by being possessed by an entity that has passed.
Yeah.
Some sort of like undead, ghost, spirit, sorcerer, which is actually surprising that there isn't that already.
That is a good observation. I can't believe that doesn't already exist. Because there is a soul option. There are soul options for a few other classes.
Yeah, there's definitely like some spooky necromancy, like undead or ghostly vibes for other.
Spirits Bard, Whispers Bard
is a good one.
Even like Spores Druid is that kind of vibe.
Yeah, a little bit of that vibe for sure.
Phantom Rogue.
Death Cleric.
Yeah.
Surprised that there's not a sorcerer for that, but I'm excited to make one. But you just made a sorcerer.
I did just make a sorcerer. Yeah. On a prompt that didn't ask me to make a sorcerer. Are you down to make
another sorcerer? That's true. You were not asked to make a sorcerer.
I was not. It's totally my fault for putting myself in that position. Would you mind if I rolled for a different class?
No, I think that's totally fine. If you want to randomize it, kind of like we did with our with our cyborg subclasses, I think that would be just fine. Yeah. If anyone is curious and hasn't heard the previous episode where Michael created the genomic sorcerer subclass based around the idea of being able to shift one's spellcasting ability, would highly recommend. Go and check out that episode number 29, I believe. You can listen to Michael's creation there. But yeah, roll for another class. What do you think?
I'm going to roll a D12.
Okay.
We're making subclasses for 2024. So that unfortunately counts out the Artificer and the Blood Hunter.
Sure.
I'm rolling a D12 here for a different class that is not a sorcerer. If I end up with a sorcerer, I'll just grin and bear it and make another sorcerer. That is a 9. Going in alphabetical order down the class list, a 9 is a rogue. A 9 is a rogue.
Oh, okay. Okay, a 9 is a rogue. A ghost-focused rogue.
That brings 2 pitfalls, right? That's going to be stacked right against the Phantom and the Soul Knife. both rogue subclasses that
Interesting.
are kind of in that realm.
I suppose that's true. I don't tend to think of those as... I mean, I suppose Soul Knife is
Soul Knife is more like psionics. It's not necessarily
psychic,
like beyond the veil type of thing. Phantom is you have the whole soul token deal and kind of the fate with death hanging in the balance vibes.
Well, if you're up for the challenge,
I
will make you reroll.
No, I like that. If anything, I know which avenues I can't walk down because of those two subclasses.
Yeah, sure.
So it'll kind of fine-tune my focus a little bit.
I do know that for you, sometimes additional strictures lead to greater creativity. So.
That's true. Both creatively and time-wise.
Also true. Well, exciting. I'm excited to see what you come up with.
Same.
I've got some ideas already. I have an old sorcerer subclass that I made years ago that might be the kind of thing that I could retool a little bit for this. But I'll have to look into it. I'm not sure.
Great.
Well, all of you at home, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Michael, is there something you'd like to say to the people before we say goodbye?
Dan, I always have something to say. It is my personal opinion that if you are inexperienced in a specific type of gameplay, you should try it at least once before you count things out. The style of gameplay that I'm going to talk about right now is theater of the mind. I think it is a largely discounted way of playing, especially now where a lot of things are done via websites like Roll20 or Owlbear Rodeo, or now D&D Beyond has a VTT on it. With so many virtual tabletops available, Theater of the Mind has kind of lost its place in modern gameplay. And I urge you, whether you do it pen and paper or over Discord in a text-based game, or however you want to do it, try Theater of the Mind just a little bit and see if you like it. Because I like it very much, and I feel like sometimes I can become immersed in a story even more when I am creating the visuals of it myself. It helps to have a DM that is very good with sensory descriptors, not just things that you see, things that you smell, you can feel, you can taste, touch, things like that. Really, any table, Theater of the Mind should have some place in the game.
It's a good time, you know? It is trickier sometimes from a DM perspective to make sure everyone is on the same page, but it can be just as excellent an experience as complex maps and things like that.
Not to say that maps are illegitimate, because I use maps all the time. I love a nice, beautifully illustrated map. Now and then, a Theater of the Mind section of a game is really nice and refreshing.
Michael, it's been a pleasure as always. Thanks for recording with me today. And everybody at home, I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your week, and we will talk to you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Hey everyone, Michael here. Thanks for listening to this episode of the College of Creation. If you want to see our creations from this episode and all of our past episodes, you can find those for free on our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/College of Creation Pod. If you feel like supporting us further, you can become a patron and access a few bonus recordings, like top 10 lists, D&D related games, and conversations that were cut from full episodes for time. If you have any questions or a homebrew prompt you'd like to see Dan and I tackle on the show, you can send those to collegeofcreationpod@gmail.com. And our intro and outro music is by Fuserwolf. You can check out his content on Bandcamp and Spotify. Again, thank you all so much for listening.